Hey there, everyone. Hope you had a fun, relaxing, family, and football-filled holiday weekend, but now it is time to get back to work. Talking about crushing your lineup construction with all the facts that you need. I'm Adam Kaufman, Alex Jankowski, Reed Fowler. You know these guys by now. This is the NFL Injury Report for Week 13. Thank you for joining us, as always. No buys, so guys, every team is in play, every player that is healthy, but of course, we know there are a lot of injuries. That's why we're here. So,
yeah, spoiler alert, Jordan Reed already ruled out for Thursday night's game. I couldn't keep it in any longer. Jordan Reed's not playing.
If this guy could just stay on the field, just the once, keep it interesting for us. All right, Redskins and Cowboys, they're going to kick off the slate in D.C. tomorrow, and then 14 games Sunday, and then the Steelers and Cincy Monday. So, again, there's a lot to cover. So let's start where we always do, fellas. Biggest storylines, of course, related to player and team health entering this week, other than Jordan Reed.
Yeah, to me, it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're getting their quarterback back. Jameis Winston practiced today, looked good enough, took majority of the first-team reps. But as I'll get to a little bit later on, the thing that concerns me is not his health, it's the health of that offensive line. Going to be down 2 starters, really something that I think you have to look at when evaluating, do you want to go back to Jameis Winston right away?
Carolina Panthers for me. I mean, you saw Greg Olsen might have come back too early, re-aggravated that foot, Funchess. McCaffrey. He just hit that injury report. So, and Rivera wasn't, we were talking about this before the show, Rivera wasn't sure. He didn't give us any sort of indication that McCaffrey was good or not. I mean, it's coach's talk, so we got to be trepidatious about that.
Yeah, you would hope it would have been one of those, he dinged up, he'll be fine. But it wasn't. It was one of those, he took a hit against the Jets. They said, is he going to play on Sunday? He just said, we'll find out tomorrow.
Yes, so we hope it's just, him.
Something to monitor,
Yeah.
I don't know why this is the first time I felt left out not having a beard, but I'm going to get used to that over the course of this show. All right, biggest injuries, guys, in Week 12. Now, C.J. Beathard injured his legs. Jimmy Garoppolo had an opportunity to make his first start for the Niners in Chicago, or at least that'll come this weekend after a nice little 1-minute sample that he had at the end of last week. One of his new targets, Marquise Goodwin, hurt his foot against the Seahawks. Paxton Lynch hurt his ankle. He'll miss multiple weeks, so the QB carousel in Denver continues. More on that a little bit later on. Amari Cooper suffered a concussion, unlikely to play this weekend because of that and the ankle injury, so a sort of smorgasbord of things for him. Greg Olsen got hurt again, aggravated his surgically repaired foot. Mike Williams carted off the field for the Chargers, and he has a knee injury. Doug Martin, Kerwin Williams, Damian Williams, all injured, and a bunch of defensive players banged up as well. So, as I always ask you guys, which team was dealt the most significant blow here, you think, Reed?
I mean, maybe not on that list, but the Giants. I mean, the Giants have 19 guys on injured reserve, and obviously the news that broke out.
It's the quarterback's fault,
right? Exactly. It's not.
Geno Smith cures all.
And what do they need to see with Geno? Like, he wasn't in their backyard, like, not doing well for the Jets. What do they need to see with him? But to me, it's the Giants. And even onto that, too, the rookie receivers that we've seen in this year's draft, not really doing much. I mean, Mike Williams carted off, John Ross. I mean, these guys haven't showed us a lot. It's really the rookie running backs we've seen.
Yeah, struggling on the field, and you think rookie tight ends, those are the ones that always take forever, and then Evan Ingram comes out, and he's the best receiver out of any of these guys that we've had so far. Yeah, Corey Davis dinged up a lot early on. John Ross now is healthy, but still and inactive. For me, it's going back to the Panthers, though, because you got Devin Funchess playing through a toe injury, and that's always great to hear he's gritting it out. He's going to give it a go. If you're in season long, you put him in. But if you're in DK, can you trust him to finish the game out now, too? And that's something you have to consider. And if Greg Olsen wouldn't be able to go, all indications are he'll be fine now. But if he isn't, Funchess is once again in a really good spot, but still battling that toe injury.
Yeah. All right, well, get your questions in. We're happy to help you out as we move along with this show for about a half hour. We'll get to those in a little bit in the program, but you can leave them right there in the Facebook Live comment section. Make it nice and easy for you. As for today's injury reports, though, here comes a mouthful. All right, QBs. Now, not an injury, but Geno Smith, as we talked about here just a little bit, he's going to start for the G-Men because apparently he cures all that ails you. Eli Manning has been benched for the first time in 211 games. Tom Brady, missed practice, likely just soreness. Missed practice the first day last week as well. Didn't matter. He played and played well. Jameis Winston practiced. He is expected to start against the Packers. Jay Cutler cleared concussion protocol, and he will, in all likelihood, lead the Broncos as well. As far as receivers go, Amari Cooper, long shot to play Sunday with his concussion. Devin Funchess missed Carolina's workout. No practice for Kelvin Benjamin because of his torn meniscus. questionable versus the Pats. Alshon Jeffrey limited with his foot injury. Allen Hurns missed practice. He hasn't played in a couple of weeks because of his ankle. Migraines have continued to hamper Sterling Shepard, but he is back at practice teaming with, again, the aforementioned Geno Smith. Chris Hogan not at practice with his shoulder for the Pats. John Brown dealing with turf toe, so no practice for him either. Running backs. Christian McCaffrey did not practice, shoulder. Devonta Freeman cleared concussion protocol, expected to face the Vikings. More on him in a little bit later as well. Ty Montgomery and Aaron Jones both held out of practice. Damian Williams day-to-day for the Dolphins with a shoulder concern. Matt Forte did not practice because of the knee. Mike Tolbert missed practice with his hammy issue. Only reinforces that LaShawn McCoy has a high floor. Doug Martin remains in the concussion protocol. Now, tight ends. This one actually a short list. Greg Olsen, he practiced. Good news after last week's foot injury. Jordan Reed has been ruled out for tomorrow with a hammy. So, again, it's a lot to digest there, guys, obviously. But prevailing thoughts, Janko, from that list?
It's good to see Sterling Shepard get in what was described as a full participation in practice. He did return to practice last week in a limited basis, but then migraines flared up again. But he was able to get in full. He said it's back to normal now. He should be good to go. Obviously, no matter who the quarterback is, given the injuries that they've had on that team, he's going to get a lot of volume.
Yeah, I think that Miami game is interesting. I think when you see Damian Williams being hurt and Kenyon Drake, and we'll get to it, won't spoil that, we'll get a little bit into it when we talk about our top storylines. I think it's a really good spot because even Denver's D-line is a little banged up, and Denver is in a world of hurt. So to me, I like that in terms of Kenyon Drake's spot. But yeah, you have to play, and not only are you looking at daily, but also season long, you're kind of making that last push. And even in the NFL and the serious nature of real playoff races, some of these guys, there are a lot of different playoff implications, so they want their best foot forward. So we'll see how that
yeah, now's the time of the year you got to look at, okay, Seth Roberts of the Raiders. Am I playing him over Des Bryant in my season long? Something like that, where conversation you would never have earlier on in the year, but the way things are going with injuries and with other ineffectiveness, now that's when you have to start making those decisions.
Listen, I get it. I've been sitting Jordy Nelson in my season-long league for weeks at this point, which is just not how you want to use your first pick in your
no
it's just not been a good situation. So we've got a lot coming up for you here. We're going to feast our eyes on a big five. I do want to add, by the way, one running back, Adrian Peterson, did not practice today because of his back, I believe it was. So big five, you see him right there on the board. All guys you've already heard about for the most part anyway, but we're going to delve a little bit deeper. So again, Devonta Freeman concussed, but he has cleared the protocols, expected to face the Vikings this weekend, which is not great news really for Tevin Coleman, who was the lead back in his absence since Week 10. Vikes do have a tough run D as well. Paxton Lynch, get to him in a moment. Same for Aaron Rodgers. Matt Stafford hurt his ankle Thanksgiving Day in the 4th, but did stay in that game all taped up. Should be good to go against the Ravens this time around, even though he is not admittedly 100%. I'm just glad it's not his finger. Jameis Winston, shoulder injury, but he practiced today. He's expected to start against the Packers after an MRI and treatment earlier in the week. He's been inconsistent, but he is having a good year, and Green Bay's defense really stinks lately in general, but especially against the pass as well. So let's go back to the QBs, though. The merry-go-round in Denver, it continues. Trevor Siemian will replace the injured Paxton Lynch as starting quarterback for the Broncos. Likely an audition a little bit for him for next year, at least to some degree. So he's appeared in 8 games this season, 11 TDs, 10 interceptions, less than 1,900 yards. Not by any stretch a great year for him, but will he thrive against a Dolphins D that, again, has been torched by opposing signal callers?
That's not a great year for by a regular metric, but when you're talking about Denver quarterbacks, Trevor Siemian looks great now in comparison to what we've seen from Brock Osweiler and Paxton Lynch. There was the right decision to start him at the beginning of the year, and at the beginning of the year, he actually looked really good. He had 6 touchdowns through 2 games, 4, I believe, in one of those games too, and then kind of the rails fell apart, and I think that's kind of where we stand now. But when you look at this matchup, it is a plus matchup going up against that Miami secondary, which certainly can get burned. Not sure that I'm necessarily saying, though, that Trevor Siemian, I think there's a lot of good value quarterbacks this week, so I'm not sure Trevor Siemian's the guy I need to target.
I mean, Paxton Lynch was a top draft pick, right? And you got, what, 3 starts out of the guy? And now he's essentially, not the answer. Chad Kelly is nowhere to be seen, right? He's been placed in the IR. So you start to look at that carousel in Denver. I mean, can it get any worse? It's already been bad. And Trevor Siemian, when you think about it, he did look well. I mean, Brock Osweiler kind of bumped up Demaryius Thomas's value because he was just peppering him with targets. So when you look at the skill players like Demaryius and some of these other running backs, Could you say Brock, kind of bumped them up? Simeon passes the eye test as the best quarterback, but Denver was already failing to begin with. I don't know if Simeon's the. We're not talking about this as Simeon as the answer. We're just saying, well, what's
who can at least get by and make these other guys viable?
Really, that's the question here, and it comes back to viability. Because as Janko hit on, I don't think you're going to go out of your way with all of the cheap options you have available to you at quarterback to play Trevor Simeon this week. But is anybody in that Broncos offense going to be boosted by this, or still just fantasy relevant?
I think the guys that are boosted by it's Devontae Booker, because none of these quarterbacks are good, so they need to just keep running the ball, and he's looked a lot better than C.J. Anderson. So I think Booker moving forward is probably the only guy that I'm looking at on this offense.
Right. There's an argument. Booker's going to get the touches, the tight ends, and A.J. Derby could get a few spots because Simeon is a guy who checks down all the time. So you could think about, okay, if Higbee gets, actually not Higbee, if A.J. Derby gets in the end zone, a touchdown for a tight end is top 10. So you could have that argument, but at the same time, it's tough.
But the other thing is you have to look at, kind of game flow and see how many chances of a touchdown, how many red zone trips are we looking at. This team is just not moving the ball. The best case is you could like that Jay Cutler's the quarterback on the other side. He'll throw an interception that, you got to kind of really go out of your way here.
Play the Broncos defense.
Yeah, you got to really go out of your way here to even find a scenario where they're moving the ball consistently. So I think Booker, you're going to kind of get some of that volume, and then other than that, I'm not touching anyone.
Yeah.
All right, well, Aaron Rodgers hoping to come back pretty soon. The reports are positive in that regard, and fittingly, just as Brett Hundley is starting to maybe find his groove a little bit, coming off a good game. But there is a report that Rodgers nearing that return from collarbone surgery, possibly as soon as Week 15, if fully healthy. He's not going to come back if he's not. But what would this mean for Jordy Nelson, the Packers offense, you think, Reed?
Yeah, it's a nice question. I mean, Jordy Nelson's on your season
It's
log.
self-serving, entirely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it bumps him up, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Jordy Nelson and Aaron Rodgers have a connection. We talked about it when he went down, that like those routes that they improvise on, Jordy Nelson scores a lot of his touchdowns, gets a lot of his points from there. I mean, it increases his value tenfold. But at the same time, Hundley, like you were saying, he might hear those footsteps. It might be an audition for him, whether it be next year, so on and so forth. So it's kind of hard for Hundley to think that now he went up against the Pittsburgh defense and did very well. I think he was top 5 or top 10 in terms of production last week from the QB standpoint. So, but of course, it bumps up Jordy Nelson's value, especially if you're in that playoff hunt.
Yeah, it all comes down to where they're going to stand in Week 15 now, and if they're able to roll off a couple wins or not. I like this spot a lot for Brett Hundley this week, and he could put forth some really good tape and then, make the case that, okay, well, win or lose, if we're out of the playoff picture, there's no need to bring it back. We talked about this with Andrew Luck, really from the very first show we had here, where we said, this team is garbage. What's the point of bringing them back and even forcing it? Packers D is getting shredded right now. This isn't a very good team, so unless Aaron Rodgers, there's a reason for him to come back, even if he's healthy, just keep Brett Hundley out there.
Yeah.
It is amazing, too. I was looking at this. Jimmy Traina from SI had this tweet earlier. I don't know if you guys saw this, just because we are talking about some of these value QBs. Listen to some of these starting quarterbacks for Week 13 in the NFL. Just think about this, okay? Week 13. Geno Smith, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Brett Hundley, Jacoby Brissett, Trevor Siemian, Matt Moore, Josh McCown, Tom Savage, Blaine Gabbert, Mitch Trubisky, Deshaun Kaiser. All of these guys are starting Week 13.
And Nate Peterman didn't even get to make the list out of all that. Yeah, no, I mean,
it is as he wrote. No wonder the ratings have been what they are. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, there's been a lot of injury, and there's just been a lot of. I mean, you come across this every year. There's just a lot of bad backup quarterbacks primarily. There's a lot of guys out there that, you don't get a lot of tape on them. You just need a serviceable guy back there who will know the playbook to go in at any time. But you don't get to see a lot of them in practice. They don't get to prepare a lot in practice either. And then they go out, and it's like, well, yeah, no wonder. Look how terrible they are.
I forgot Blaine Gabbert. I mean,
no, he's on there.
Oh, is he on there?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, Aaron's came out and said, hey, this could be our guy next year.
You better hope not.
Yeah, it is a weird thing to watch. All these backup quarterbacks. We'll see how it pans out. You could hit one.
I mean, when you're talking about DraftKings, a lot of those guys, they sound awful, but on a 1 week scenario, they're priced reasonably. And in a 1 week scenario, there's a lot of bad secondaries out there too. There's a lot of high scoring games to be had. So don't always look at that and think, well, I got to pay up for Tom Brady, Russell Wilson every single week. You don't need to. There's a lot of these guys where you can you find the value there, and then you move on.
All right, well, let us move on because we've got a special guest with us for some actual medical analysis, not just our harebrained conjecture. Dr. Selene Parekh, co-founder of the Fantasy Doctors and professor of orthopedic surgery at Duke. Dr. P, how are you, sir?
I'm good. Happy holidays, guys.
Same to you. Hopefully you had a nice break. We're going to come right at you with questions. All right, the big story this week outside of injuries is, of course, we've talked about it a little bit, Eli Manning benched by the Giants, 210 straight starts. That is no more. He's going to sit behind Geno Smith, of all people, not even Davis Webb, Geno Smith. Are there things that players can do to help avoid injuries, to stay healthy like he's done for more than a decade, or is there, I don't know, some luck involved? It can't just be avocado ice cream for the Tom Bradys of the world.
Yeah, well, I think it's a multiple factor here. So luck has a lot to do with it, but I do think that there are some real good things that guys can do. So if you're a quarterback, you need to know how to to slide properly. You need to know how to avoid hits, and you have people like Russell Wilson who will run and scramble, but they know how to take the hits. They know how to avoid them, and so they can keep the impact to their body as minimal as possible. So that's one part of this equation. And then the other part is kind of the Tom Brady phenomenon, trying to optimize your sleep, trying to really optimize your diet, avoiding those caffeine and the sugar and the free radicals, and even going to a vegan diet. Some athletes who are older even go to things like bone broth soup and do regenerative medicine where they try to use their stem cells to try to keep healing going. And so there's a lot of this kind of myth behind all of it. Ultimately, I think it's partly what your body makeup is, luck, and playing the right way. And I think that's how you get longevity in your career.
Yeah, don't forget the concussion water for Brady there as well. But you know what? Relevant to quarterbacks, because you talked about Russell Wilson sliding the right way, that type of thing. One thing that Brady and some other QBs have done or do, Brady has talked about it a lot, is the sort of the conscious or over time anyway, when you're in the league long enough, it becomes sort of subconscious. The deliberately falling on the non-throwing shoulder, let's say, when you're taking hits, turning your body a certain way so you can at least,
decisions.
Yeah, well, and that's what it is. So that, you may be, let's say you're a right-handed quarterback, as most are, you're horribly banged up on the left side of your body, but as long as that arm is still okay, you can go out there and play and you just don't even worry about that. But I don't know, to what degree, I guess I wonder, does that sort of set you up for problems long-term, just to sort of stay in the moment?
Well, I think potentially it does, but you know what? These guys are thinking about the moment. They're thinking about the season, the year, the game. And so for them, it's anything that they have to do to stay in the game. And just like you're saying, I think over time, it's almost this muscle memory that we see with elite athletes. You learn how to take the hits. You learn how to fall the right way. And you learn to do the things to minimize your chance of injury. And those are the guys who then barely are out from season to season. And so, unless it's something unfortunate like Tom Brady or Eli Manning, you'll see these guys being reliable in and out every single week.
Well, Devonta Freeman has been cleared from the concussion protocol. We've mentioned that a couple times here, and we're hearing that term sort of constantly now, it seems, this year and last year even, just he's in concussion protocol. But the thing is, we don't really know what that means. We just sort of say it because we hear it. What are doctors actually looking for during initial tests on the sidelines when they have a player under the tent, so to speak? How are those guys cleared and sent back out on the field? What are some of the things that they're looking for?
So the biggest thing is that the NFL obviously has made concussion a big part of what's going on. It is a huge public health issue. And if you look at kind of the younger kids who are playing Pop Warner, a lot of parents are worried about this whole issue even at that level. And so you're seeing the participation in those sports really dwindle, or in those leagues. So the bottom line is that the NFL came up with this concussion protocol, and it's all based on neuropsychological testing that's done before the season starts, so in preseason play. And what they're doing is testing the memory of these athletes, their critical thinking, their ability to retain information and do certain types of activities, kind of testing basically from your nose to touching a finger, doing some of the reflex stuff and looking at muscle strength and things like that. Now, when you have a blow to the head during the game, in the tent, they are repeating these tests in a rapid-fire manner. And if any of these tests look abnormal from what was the preseason testing for this athlete, they are then asked to go to the locker room and be evaluated further. If all the testing initially comes back normal, then they're cleared to get back onto the playing field. And that's how this concussion protocol works. Once you're in the protocol, you have to shut down the play, and these athletes are pretty much taking their mental rest. So it used to be you'd keep them in a dark room. You wouldn't even have them watch TV. They couldn't watch their Netflix and binge watch it. It's really just quiet time and letting the mind recover. That's being challenged now because there's some data suggesting that getting them to start doing things mentally is actually good for the brain to recover from the concussion. And what happens is every day these guys get retested. And as their testing returns to normal, they start getting allowed to return to the practice field non-contact, then practice field with contact, and then back in the game.
Hey, Doctor, a follow-up here. When we see Russell Wilson, when he got that concussion, I think it was a few weeks ago, and he kind of just for I guess for window shopping purposes, he went into the tent, but then went directly back in the game. And we saw it with Telvin Smith, too, of the Jaguars this past Sunday. In terms of how they can sort of skate the test and in-game come back in when probably they shouldn't, and now with Telvin Smith, the NFL is going to do some investigation to see if they were doing this correctly. In terms of what you're seeing, how can guys skate around those tests in-game?
Well, so that's the thing, right? I don't think necessarily the guys are skating around it, but the problem is that you're in this medical tent. Nobody knows what's going on, and I don't believe that there's any cameras in the tent so that if they're doing the NFL's doing the investigation, they're seeing that the tests are being conducted appropriately in the tent. So there is a little bit of wiggle room here, but don't be surprised with those two incidences that next year you start seeing cameras in the tent so that if the NFL has to do an investigation, they have the footage of what happened in the tent.
All right, Dr. Selene Parekh, co-founder of the Fantasy Doctors. Dr. Pete, thank you very much for joining us as always. Let's do it again next week. What do you say?
Sounds good. Perfect. Thanks, guys.
All right, Dr. P once again joining us, and always good to have a medical professional on the show, someone that actually knows what they're talking about when it comes to some of that stuff. But each of these guys here, they have a few key storylines that they want to hit on as well. Reed, what do you got?
Yeah, my first one is Matt Stafford. I think we saw him in that Thursday Thanksgiving game kind of get that ankle tweaked. And I mean, this guy is 7th in the completions, 4th in TDs. And if the Lions don't have Stafford, like what do they have, right? I mean, you saw Marvin Jones, he played well, but coming from Stafford, I think if you see him not come out, that downgrades those guys a little bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, Marvin Jones was able. Some of those throws were in like quadruple coverage. Yeah. Marvin Jones just went up and got. He was guys on the field, playing ridiculously out of his mind in that game. But yeah, I mean, obviously, overall, Matt Stafford not being at the helm, not good thing.
You look at a guy like Case Keenum. I mean, he's cheaper than Stafford, or he was around that same price. I mean, this guy has been playing out of his mind, and he's always playing really well when someone is behind him. You might hear those Teddy footsteps a little bit. And Zimmer, there's this sort of fervor around Teddy Bridgewater coming back. So. Fire up Case Keenum. This guy's been playing really well as long as he's been starting. Zimmer's come out and said, this guy's our starter, but who knows what's happening behind closed doors. So I like Case Keenum in this spot.
Yeah, I mean, having a good run game and a good defense certainly always helps. Yeah. I mean, that's been the greatest thing for Keenum. He didn't have that out there in L.A. with the Rams. So the ability to just run the ball and then have Adam Thielen and Steph Diggs as well.
Yeah, and Damian Williams, my second one from Miami. I mean, this guy, not a huge headliner for intensive purposes, but you look at that game in Miami and Denver, Kenyon Drake's going to get a bulk because even the backup got concussed. So to me, Kenyon Drake is a solid play. We talked about it a little bit. Pecco, the defensive lineman, the nose guard, also went out. This guy was a run stopper. I mean, he stopped everything. If he's not playing, Kenyon Drake seems like a very, very interesting play against that team. He's going to get 20-plus carries, in my opinion. Cutler's coming back. They might not want Cutler to throw that much. I mean, that would probably be a good idea. But to me, Kenyon Drake's in a solid spot in that game against Denver. And Denver is in shambles, so I like that one. Last but not least, Greg Olsen. I mean, if he's not playing or if he's limited in any fashion and Funchess is still out, McCaffrey is banged up, I mean, Carolina is in a good spot for their own playoff race. So Greg Olsen, to me, is someone that I would keep my eye out on. And then you look at guys like Jared Cook, against, and I think you're going to talk about that a little bit, Janko. Jared Cook against the Giants, who are dead last. They're always giving up points to tight ends. Jared Cook's in a solid spot.
Yeah, until Vernon Davis last week hung the triple bagel 0-0-0 up against them. That was a little bit disheartening for some of us. But yeah, totally. I'll get to that a little bit later on with Cook. My number 3 storyline right now, though, is Devonta Freeman cleared, expected to be back in this game. I really liked what Tevin Coleman did as the lead back there. I mean, overall, I think he's been the more impressive running back. The issue, though, that I have is not only has his price gotten up to $7,000, but it's also this matchup against the Vikings, a very solid defense. So I would go down a little bit. Jordan Howard, 6,500, a guy is going to get those carries. Tariq Cohen, Benny Cunningham, they're not getting nearly as much, on the field as much. Jordan Howard's going to get a lot of work up against San Francisco. Much, much better matchup there. Number 2, talking about the Raiders, Amari Cooper and Michael Crabtree. Yeah, his suspension got reduced. Still missing, though, this game. Doesn't sound like Crabtree is going to be back. We haven't really heard much yet either way, but he has the concussion. He has the sprained ankle as well, so it kind of sounds like he's a long shot. So go to Jared Cook, 5,400. Been playing well of late anyways. Now you get that matchup against the Giants, who are in shambles. Just lost Janoris Jenkins as well. A lot of reasons there to like Jared Cook. My number 1, it is Jameis Winston practicing, but it's not because I want to play Jameis Winston. Like I said, I think it helps Mike Evans, certainly. It helps his ceiling. His floor was pretty good, actually, with Fitzpatrick there. He was still getting the volume. But with Winston back in, certainly it helps Mike Evans a lot. But that offensive line, it scares me. I'm not sold on going to Winston just yet, so I would go down. We talked about a ton of value quarterbacks. I would stay in this matchup. I would go to Brett Hundley down at 5,100 in this matchup against the Buccaneers, a secondary we've seen get shredded multiple times. Yep. Brett Hundley's starting to look pretty good, and I mean, I know Aaron Rodgers is coming back, and if he's healthy, he's going to be the starter, but Hundley could be playing for another team. We talk about all these terrible starting quarterbacks. Yep. I mean, maybe they're all looking at Brett Hundley to see what he can do.
Yep. I mean, do you think that Oakland, I hate to say this as an Oakland fan, but that Oakland Giants is a trap game? I mean, they lose their starting quarterback. There's all of this media presence and all these questions asked. I mean, you see a team in these instances kind of rise to the occasion and play well. Do you think that it's a quote-unquote trap game for Oakland?
Can I take this for just a second? Geno Smith is starting for the Giants.
Hey, I mean,
no,
you never know. You never know.
Well, I know. I do know. No.
What I was going to say, I don't think Oakland's that good of a team anyways. I mean, the defense struggles. I think this is going to be an awful game by all accounts.
It's going to be a shootout.
3-0. Well, and maybe it is.
45-40.
Look at the Giants and the Chiefs game, right? We thought there's no way the Giants are going to play well against the Chiefs. Yeah. And look what happened. Again, the Chiefs were sort of a mirage to begin with in terms of their talent and how they move the ball.
5-0 in junk since.
But you never, I mean, any given Sunday.
Well, in the Giants, I mean, they might hate their coach or whatever and want their coach gone, but they still are sick of getting crapped on by everybody. So
but you're right.
They're going to come back and play pretty well. But
that's the thing. We've all heard the phrase "any given Sunday." It's just most people never say the second part, which is "any given Sunday," unless Geno Smith is the quarterback.
I've heard that one.
It's a totally different situation. Let's bring in Jeff Ulrich, who has been listening, standing by, and taking notes. I imagine on everything these guys have been saying. Jeff,
drawing, I hope.
Yeah, I hope he's been drawing. He didn't do any drawing for us for the following show when we did NBA Pre-Lock last week. You have any thoughts on what these guys had to say? Do you believe in the Giants this week, Jeff?
Oh no, I do not believe in the Giants this week. You can say what you want about the Oakland Raiders, but they're an actual NFL football team, and they're also still in the playoff race. They played pretty nice against the Broncos last week. I've got a couple games that I want to target for blowout potential, and this is definitely one of them. I can't even imagine the theme in the locker room right now with Eli getting benched and all the ex-Giants coming in and chiming in. So I'm anticipating this being ugly. Definitely going to look at some Oakland Raiders this week, though. I think Cordell Patterson's very interesting with possibly both wide receivers out. Obviously, lots of people are going to gravitate towards Jared Cook. I think Patterson might be the play there, but we can talk about that maybe a bit more tomorrow. As far as injury situations go, I got to bring up my guy off the top here. CJ Beathard, finally. We've put the CJ Beathard era behind us, and it's time to bring Jimmy Garoppolo out of the garage.
Didn't need to wait to say the name correctly.
He's just come and gone.
Just
total disrespect.
Who cares?
Total disrespect.
CJ, whatever.
Screw that guy. Garoppolo era's underway.
Who cares? The cover's off the Porsche. If you watch the last minute of the San Francisco-Seattle game, you saw what this guy brings to the table. He's a good decision maker. He'll run it when he needs to. He's a far better passer. I can't wait for this game. Chicago's falling apart. I think he bumps up Marquise Goodwin as well. So I'm excited to roll him out maybe next week. But he's cheap too. Definitely keep an eye on him as the rest of the season goes. But that's big news to me. Kelvin Benjamin being out too. Sean McDermott is, everyone's day-to-day with him. Not really sure on the status. I don't think he's going to play again. I don't think Kelvin Benjamin's going to play again this week. So if he doesn't, Zay Jones, targets have been going up, 10 targets last week. I know the connection between him and Tyrod Taylor it's not really ideal. They're just not connecting on like a high volume of passes. But at the same time, maybe you get a little bit of prevent defense against the Patriots late in the game. Maybe gets in the end zone again. The potential's there. He's still only 4,600, so he's definitely a guy I would like if Kelvin Benjamin misses, because I think that he'll see another 10 targets. So, and then my last situation to monitor, Allen Hurns, if he misses again, D.D. Westbrook is another player whose targets are on the rise, 10 targets last week. Again, maybe the connection isn't quite what we want it to be right now. He's not converting all these targets into catches. Part of that is Blake Bortles' quarterback, but we saw D.D. Westbrook in the preseason. It's a player very capable of, busting a long play, finding a long touchdown, and possibly just breaking out, in a pretty decent matchup. So I think D.D. Westbrook at his price is still very much in play if Allen Hurns misses again, because, like I said, he's definitely a player with potential. Now he's got a couple games under his belt. I think we'll see a big game from him before the year ends.
Who's that Niners starter again?
Garoppolo.
Oh, okay. I wanted to make sure. All right, Jeff Ulrich, thanks for joining us, pal. We'll do the matchups breakdown thing again with you tomorrow, as we always do. Two-time reigning loser, Jeff Ulrich, of the four-man competition. Hey. So I can't wait to see what's in store for you, pal.
I'm on a real heater here. I can't wait.
It's going to be a lot of fun. All right, Jeff, thanks for joining us. Guys, I can't get my mind past this Giants situation. You talk about the Raiders game. I can't believe and it's not even that Eli's been benched. They haven't won a playoff game in the last 6 years. Fine, that's okay. But when you're not grooming Davis Webb along the way, and you go to Geno Smith, when you're still trying to sell fans on giving us a chance to win, when, 19 guys that are on injured reserve for this team, you've lost Odell Beckham Jr., you've lost Brandon Marshall, you
lost fans.
Offensive line is junk. You have former Giants, even some current Giants, speaking out against, Coach Ben McAdoo-nothing. It's such a disaster. I can't even wrap my head around it.
Yeah.
An embarrassment.
The worst part is to actually then say Geno Smith gives us the best chance of winning. Like, why not? That to me, like, to even try and say
that's
that
the
with
ultimate
a straight
thing. That's
face.
worse than benching Eli.
Exactly.
It's saying that.
Yeah, and the whole thing of saying, well, Eli, you can come in and start if you want to keep your streak going. Then we'll yank you right after.
Yeah, play the first half like a preseason game.
As only Mike Francesa could say it. I won't do the voice because I can't. I would be doing a disservice, but he said, you can't run these clowns out of town fast enough. And I think that's just where we are with the Giants right now.
Very quickly, and I mean like 15 seconds, your game to watch, each of you, read.
Yeah, Minnesota, Atlanta. I think Atlanta's been playing well. They're in the wild card spot. Minnesota's obviously in the top, so I want to see how that pans out in the NFC.
It is Carolina and New Orleans for me. Two of the top three most expensive running backs are wearing New Orleans Saints uniforms this week. How can these guys continue to produce with only about 13 to 14 touches for Alvin Kamara, who's now the highest priced running back on this Sunday slate against a good defense in Carolina? Do they keep it up, or where does this ownership fall? How many people trust these guys to produce at those high salaries?
Or maybe Drew Brees could just start passing the ball a little bit and also help my season-long
there
team.
it is.
All right, guys,
so
matchups break.
It's
full circle here. Matchups breakdown tomorrow with Jeff, with Pierce, with Mayo, with me. We're going to do that a little bit later on. If you'd like to join us again, it's going to be NBA Pre-Lock Live. If you're into hoops, headed your way 6 o'clock on Periscope. At the very least, but we'll be across multiple platforms as well. So join us there. Stay with us on DK Live. It's been fun, as always.
Let's do it again.